Week 27. Thanks, John, for getting our show launched today. Thanks to all of you for joining me for a special edition of Saving America for the 4th of July. America celebrates 250 years of freedom for its citizens. It's been a strange celebration with our country deeply divided over politics. In fact, a concert planned to celebrate in D.C. was canceled since so many performers backed out due to politics. I'm truly upset over this situation, and so should you be. Americans, it's okay to have different politics, but sometimes we all need to get together, have a drink, enjoy some barbecue, and just get along with each other. In 2000, I was in the priority seating for the U.S. Capitol's 4th of July celebration. It was great. How can we not top that for today, our 250th? I hope those of you patriots out there are at least enjoying your time with your family and maybe some barbecue. While Trump did not get his concert, he did get the historic reflecting pool in front of the Lincoln Memorial restored. I've been there many times over the years. It is truly impressive. It is evidence of the insanity of the so-called TDS that every American is not proud to have the pool restored. This needs to be done every 10 to 15 years. In fact, the last time it was done was during the Obama administration. I don't remember a single person saying it wasn't worth the money. On the plus side, America's been flooded with tourists from around the world for FIFA. This is not just a financial plus, although reportedly hosting the games will bring in billions of dollars. The feedback from the foreign fans has been terrific. They find Americans friendly, the country beautiful, and a favorite place to visit here in Texas is the original Buc-ee's. Yep. They're also enjoying the prices and variety at Walmart and of all things, including ranch dressing. In fact, a few of the traveling tourists missed that part about not taking large liquids on planes as they tried to bring multiple bottles home in their carry-on luggage. For those of you that may not know, the more heavily favored condiment overseas is mayonnaise, and it's generally difficult or expensive to find good ranch dressing. Maybe we can add it to the export list to help offset some of those trade imbalances. Regarding food, Waffle House also merited some mentions. And something most Americans take for granted, they've been impressed with the large servings at some restaurants. Houston, as a host city, has had some special FIFA entertainment. An estimated crowd of about 15,000 walked the 3 miles from Rice University to the stadium hosting the game between the Netherlands and Sweden. It was referred to as the Orange Fan Walk. The cool thing, despite the heat and humidity, was the good nature and positive vibes from the crowd. I do not recall a single police incident out of the event. The Dutch won the game 5-1, so the crowd was rewarded for their efforts. A sad footnote is that the slopstream media question whether the fans are just seeking fame from their post and are not really that enthusiastic about America. I find this to be sour grapes that the real America breaks through the adverse coverage of just about everything these days. Yes, Trump managed to bring the games here during his first term, and he is president now to enjoy that success. But it is America's success. The left could at least celebrate that. So what else is going on? American injustice on steroids. Saving America extends sympathy to the families of the victims in the horrendous earthquakes in Venezuela. Government fraud continues to be exposed. Let's take a closer look at these and other hot stories for week 27 of 2026, followed by my interesting guests this week, Trevor Harrison and Mike Kusarski. Before we dive deeper, a quick shout out to all of you, longtime listeners and the new folks who've just joined me. Your support keeps this whole thing moving. If what you hear strikes a chord with you, post a like, leave a comment, and hit subscribe on whatever platform you're on. And if something crosses your radar that the slopstream media is ignoring, as they tend to do, you can always send it my way at drdavesavesamerica.com. I read everything that you send in. American injustice on steroids. It pains me to talk about a negative aspect of American life at 250 years, but we need to talk about the bad and the good. Somehow our American justice system has fallen off the wheels. This is not universal, of course, but for America to make it another 250 years, we have to get back on track. For instance, here in Houston, I heard about a fellow who was in an argument with his girlfriend while they were part of a moving crew. Keith Bembley Sims is charged with running her over with the moving truck and then driving off. He is charged with manslaughter and failure to stop and render aid in the accident involving death. Best I can tell from the coverage of the incident, it sounded deliberate. So why is he charged with such lower-level crimes? The story is that 2 charges were heard by 2 different judges. That in itself makes no sense. Judge Colleen Guido set a $60,000 bond, and Judge Andrea Beal set a $60,000 bond to reach a total bond of $120,000. Even more troubling, Sims was already out on a general order bond for an illegal dumping case involving the same truck allegedly used in this incident. It does not sound like the judges took the case seriously. These bumbling judges need to be voted out in the next election cycle. America, wake up, enforce the laws, and stop being weak on crime. Let's talk about voting. The right to vote is a precious right of being an American citizen. So why would a judge block the administration from cleaning up the National Voters Database? Well, that has just happened. The database is tying Social Security numbers and citizenship data together. Sounds like a responsible move by our government. U.S. Judge Sparkle Sukinen has tried to block the process. She said states have used inaccurate data to wrongly identify Americans as non-citizens and purge them from the voter rolls. I saw not a scintilla of data that this was used to support this claim. And even if true, would that not be the responsibility of the federal agencies to fix it, not some whack job judge? So, Sparkle is from Trinidad and Tobago and was a last-minute appointment by failed President Biden just as he was being let out the door. This is a lifetime appointment, so all my listeners and fans, call your congressperson and report Sparkle Sukinen as an anti-American failed judge who needs to be impeached now. Tell your representative to impeach Judge Sparkle. Then another deranged federal judge just blocked the government from restricting the SNAP benefits to real food. U.S. District Judge Amy Berman Jackson ruled the U.S. Department of Agriculture cannot approve state waivers restricting SNAP purchases of sugary drinks and candy. Think about it. SNAP stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. What is nutritious about candy and soda? Her ruling ridiculously claims that the U.S. government lacks the authority to stop SNAP recipients from using food stamps to buy candy and sugary drinks. The ruling overturns pilot programs in Colorado, Iowa, Nebraska, Tennessee, and West Virginia. Fortunately, the court district only covers 5 states, so the restriction in Texas can stay in place. Not surprisingly, she was educated at that far-left operation called Harvard and appointed by left-wing Obama. I have more to say about SNAP benefits. According to my research, the average household monthly SNAP benefit is about $300 a month. Now, just for this story, I ran down to my local Kroger and confirmed that the non-sale price of a case of soda is $11.99 or about $1 per can. Let's say you drink about a can a day or 3 cases a month. That's $33 or over 10% of your nutrition program that basically does nothing to provide nutrition. By allowing SNAP recipients to consume this ultra-processed crap keeps them unhealthy and lazy and on the government dole. Stick to fresh fruits and vegetables, the healthy ingredients like milk and cheese that are already subsidized by the U.S. government. So then America could have a direct return on its investment. We all know that Coke is behind the scenes making donations to members of Congress to make sure that Coke and other produced trash is available in the government subsistence program. Stop the corruption. People, tell your representatives just for once it's time to stop wasting our tax dollars on sugary drinks to survive. Then we have District Judge Angel Kelly of the District of Massachusetts, a loser appointed by Biden and educated at left-leaning Georgetown law. She irrationally demanded that the woke signs which were defacing certain federal monuments be returned to their locations. They were removed by the current administration's Interior Department to fix the disgraceful signs put up by the Biden flunkies. The signs deal with discredited climate alarmism and DEI type stuff. For the record, I have been to some of the important national sites like the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. I've read some of the woke signage that was removed. As a red-blooded American, I found that signage to be offensive and anti-American. I hope the Interior Department will find an appellate judge to freeze the order by Angel. Not to be outdone, there is a ruling by District Judge Denise Casper, another on the federal court in Massachusetts, and not surprisingly went to Harvard and, of course, appointed by Obama. She ruled that Trump's executive order demanding that the Election Assistance Commission include a proof of American citizenship requirement in its national mail voter registration form is unconstitutional. How can proving you're an American citizen ever be unconstitutional? This judge, like the other federal judges I just mentioned, need to be impeached now. Time to clean out the judiciary of such far-left trash. Boy, I've got to take a moment here. I'm overwhelmed by all these brainwashed judges. Flip side, it's important that you hear the story of a heroic doctor in Georgia. Dr. Jenna Salem was attacked in her own home in DeKalb County, Georgia. The person suspected of the crime, Derek Bernstein, cut her electricity and then attacked her in her bed after she had already worked a long shift as a resident at a hospital. The victim endured a violent assault involving strangulation, sexual violence, and attempted fatal injuries caused by a knife. Somehow, she fought her way to escape to a neighbor's house. Her alleged attacker has been charged with over 40 different crimes. Right, I'm not sure if you heard that, folks. 40 separate charges. I mean, if this doesn't get your blood boiling, I don't know what does. But this criminal was able to be out on the street to commit this horrible attack and near murder. Where is the concern for the victims? His list of prior offenses include, ready? Multiple counts of aggravated assault, armed robbery and attempted armed robbery, possession of a firearm or knife during commission of certain felonies, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, aggravated assault with intent to rob, at least one prior murder charge. Folks, this is not justice. This is overwhelming proof of the miscarriage of justice for this person to be out on the streets. Multiple judges have allowed this threat to the community out on the streets. Look them up and get them off the bench now. Not all these given a pass or mail. We have a clown judge in Florida, Miguel de la O. Yep, that's his name. He found 43-year-old Precious Bland not guilty by reason of insanity for the 2021 drowning of her 15-month-old daughter and the stabbing of her husband and teenage daughter. The judge ruled that Bland suffered a severe psychotic break caused by COVID-19 and could not understand her actions. That's at least what was argued by her defense attorneys. They claimed that Bland suffered from acute COVID-19 induced psychosis. Something I can tell you I surely have not heard of before. That's probably because it's the most make-believe, liberal-brained defense anyone could have ever concocted. The prosecution argued the defense was fabricated in the attack instead, which sounds more logical, by anger over her husband's suspected infidelity. But the judge rejected this theory. Incredibly, she was released to receive mental health treatment instead of being locked up for the rest of her life in a criminal wing of a state asylum. Folks, this is not justice. Hopefully, the Florida AG will succeed in impeaching this judge, who is a danger to common sense as well as the public. On the plus side, Texas does have some justice. On July 4, 2025, an Antifa terrorist crew attacked a Texas immigration detention facility. Benjamin Song got a 100-year sentence for wounding a deputy. This was tied to his conviction for attempted murder and terrorism. 7 others in his crew got 30 to 50-year sentences. The 9th defendant got 30 years for concealing documents related to the crimes. Now, this is justice and how to stop terrorism in our wonderful country. A salute to U.S. District Judges Mark Pittman and Reed O'Connor, who rendered those verdicts. O'Connor is quoted as calling the attacks an assault on democracy. It's about time that our society is being protected. Why isn't this getting some slopstream media coverage? Because communists don't care about their own. They just want to push the narrative. It encourages lame-brained protesters to go out there and get arrested. They think they won't face consequences. That's why you should subscribe and turn on alerts on your favorite platform so you can get news from sources like Saving America, where I dig deep to find stories that might not be on the slopstream radar. I appreciate your listening, commenting, and sharing. It means a lot to me to know that the work that I'm doing is getting out there. If you have a story you think is missing and needs to come to light, feel free to send it in. I read everything that comes in. Saving America extends sympathy to the families of the victims of the horrendous earthquakes in Venezuela. 10 days ago, earthquakes measuring 7.2 and 7.5 hit parts of Venezuela. The death toll shot past 1,430, and the damage is so extensive, additional deaths may still be discovered. At one point, 50,000 people were reported missing. The 2 quakes happening just 39 seconds apart followed a known fault line that runs diagonally through the country. It impacted the capital of Caracas, where I have watched news reports with major buildings in ruins. An adjacent coastal state of La Guaira experienced some of the most devastating damage. On the positive side, Venezuela is now part of the international community with the removal of dictator Maduro earlier this year. So aid is flooding in from around the world. 1,600 teams from around the world at last count. Since the main airport was damaged in the earthquake, it's difficult to get aid to where it needs to go. Also, after decades of failed governance, the infrastructure of the country is not in a position to respond to such a disaster. It was reported that people were using their bare hands to get to some places to get to possible survivors. I'm not an expert on earthquakes, but in my research, I learned that the U.S. Geological Survey said part of the cause for the huge casualties was due to the region's infrastructure. Further, the quakes occurred at shallow depths, making the damage even worse. Tremors were even felt in the neighboring countries of Colombia and Brazil. I was in the Amazon part of Venezuela in late December while visiting Colombia. So indeed, the 2 countries share a common terrain. I am glad to see that the friends that I made in Colombia were not impacted. Government fraud continues to be exposed. It seems like about once a month we hear about even bigger cases of fraud against the government. A massive fraud was just announced by AG Todd Blanche and made a major announcement concerning healthcare fraud. How about 455 defendants across 45 states? The alleged number is $6.5 billion in false claims involving Medicare, Medicaid, and other federal programs. This is an outrage for sure. Of those charged, there are 90 doctors and medical professionals. This is unthinkable that some of the highest paid and most respected in our society would impose these losses on the American people. An incredible example of the fraud is from Arizona. A corporate executive is accused of a $2 billion fraud scheme over unnecessary wound grafts, which allegedly cost taxpayers more than $1 million per patient. And not surprising these days, Dr. Oz, head of CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, announced that Medicaid's dramatic spending growth is unsustainable. Federal Medicaid spending has increased 50% over the last 5 years. He said the system is being gamed by the states. The new investigative strategy is to follow the flow of the money rather than just individual offenders. Some of the states have grabbed as much money as possible from the federal piggy bank. Key here is that the money is likely being wasted and not going to help patients. I have strongly recommended that all federal funding stop. There are no poor states. I am sure the states would spend the money more carefully if it was all their money. A special concern of mine is that some blue states are using Medicaid money to fund political action committees, also known as PACs. Dr. Oz cited cases in New York where hundreds of millions of Medicaid dollars allegedly intended for nurse training or nursing home care were diverted to increase union benefits or pay lobbyists. CMS has frozen or withheld substantial Medicaid funds from several states, most notably withholding billions from Minnesota and deferring hundreds of millions in payments over fraud concerns and missing corrective action plans. I have recently proposed life in prison for the lower level thieves and the death penalty where the loss is $1 million or more. Time to stop this stealing from us taxpayers. Ukraine kicking butt. After years of reading that Ukraine is just days away from collapse and fighting the Russian invasion, the reports are beginning to change. A lot of this carnage started in 2014 during the Obama administration. The Russians seized Crimea and the world did nothing. So the current invasion, now in its fourth year, is not a surprise. The turnaround is marked by reports of critical strikes by Ukraine. They hit Crimea with a mass of drones, killing 4 and causing Russia to stop fuel sales in this important port area. Of course, Russia continues its terrorist strikes on civilians in Ukraine. Ukraine's president said they have improved their drone capabilities, specifically mentioning the land bridge that Russia uses to supply occupied Crimea. They have also begun to send targeted attacks against targets near Moscow. I was delighted to hear that they lit up a big oil refinery near Moscow twice. Reports are that Ukraine has stopped 1/3 of Russia's major oil production capacity. Of course, Putin still refuses to go to peace talks. And in our special interest report this week, American fighting the New World screwworm. The problem started south of the border but has spread into a handful of U.S. cattle, with cases in Texas and New Mexico. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and state agencies are enforcing movement controls, releasing sterile flies, and tracking cases to contain the spread. The pest itself is actually a parasitic fly. Unlike common blowflies that feed on decaying meat, female screwworms lay eggs in the open, fresh wounds of living, warm-blooded animals. Once hatched, the maggots burrow into the living flesh and consume the tissue, which can be fatal if left untreated. Sadly, like some human infections, this problem was eradicated in the U.S. in the 1960s. The latest report is that there have been 26 detected cases in U.S. cattle and sheep. Ranchers have been told to conduct daily inspections of all livestock, wildlife, and pets, particularly for fresh wounds or signs of maggot infestations. While it can infect domestic pets and even humans, that is extremely rare, fortunately. And that's my Week in Review report for week 27 of 2026. Thanks for joining us as we break down court decisions, business disputes, and legal issues shaping the world around us. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share this with someone who wants to understand the law. without all that legal mumbo jumbo. Have an interesting case or business story you'd like us to cover? Send it our way. It may appear in a future episode. And if you've missed any of our previous segments or want to hear one again, check us out at our website, DrDaveSavesAmerica.com. Now let's all go out and consciously get along with our neighbors. Let's reduce the violence and discord in our wonderful country.